This video will show you how to use the MPE Bower Close ambient and evolving sound to make a simple song in Ableton Live 11 Lite. This is the screen you're shown when you first load Ableton Live 11 Lite. Let's begin by removing these two audio tracks. Right click, select delete. The sound we're using today is called MPE Bower Close. So up here under collections, we click on sounds, then we click on ambient and evolving, this small arrow here, and we're down here MPE Bower Close. Here's how that sounds. You can mute using the small headphone icon, and we'll click off. So in order to load this sound, we need to left click and drag up to the top clip. You can see down here that the MPE Bower Close sound is now loaded on track 1. We can now use this sound to make music using MIDI data. In order to enter the MIDI data, we double click on the top clip. This loads the MIDI editor down below. If we click on this headphone icon, we can preview the sound on the piano roll. Today we're going to use a chord progression in the key of C major. So our scale will be C major. So if you click on scale, C major is selected, and you can see the notes are highlighted here in the MIDI editor. If you click on scale here, it hides the notes that aren't in the scale you've chosen, but we'll keep the whole piano roll. We're going to use a 1-2-1-5 4-bar chord progression, and we're also going to use a major chord first inversion. If you need some help with these concepts, please check out our video on the 1-2-5 chord progression. That'll have everything you need. It's quite straightforward. First thing we need to do here is change our loop length to 4 bars. So left click here and drag up. You can also double click and enter the number. We're going to do 1 chord per bar. With these ambient and evolving sounds, you often can't hear a whole chord played. So we're just going to play the lowest note, the bass note in the chord, and that will represent our harmony or chord section. So our chord progression is 1-2-1-5. So in the key of C major, the 1 chord is C, the 2 chord is D minor, and the 5 chord is G. So for our first bar, we just need a C major chord. And so the lowest note, the root note, is C. So we'll start with a C note. I'm going to come down. If you use your mouse wheel, you can scroll down here to a lower octave. So we'll go down to C2. So you double click. That creates a note of 1/16 length. That's the default length. And then you see this handle here. We left click and drag across to create a bar of C. The second bar, we're going to the 2 chord, which is D minor in the key of C major. And the lowest note in that chord is D. So here's D, double click, drag across. For the third bar, we're going to use a C chord again, but this time we're going to use a first inversion. So it uses the same notes as the C chord, which is C, E, and G, but rather than having the lowest note as C, the lowest note will then become E. The reason we're doing this is we are going to create a rising bass line through our chord progression. So rather than going back to C here, if we were using a standard C, the lowest note will become E, so we can move that up. You can move a note up by left click holding and dragging, or highlighting a note and using your up and down keys on your keyboard. 1 chord C in the first bar, the 2 chord D minor, so D in the second bar, 1 chord first inversion with E as the lowest note in the third bar. And then in our final 4th bar, we're going to the 5 chord which is G major in the key of C major. So we'll just keep this as standard and play a G note. Okay, so that's our chord progression. You can see that we're stepping up. You see that here? Always rising. So let's preview that. If we come up here, you can see this clip has filled with red color. That means we've got MIDI data. Click on play. Okay, you can hear that rising bass line. And we'll stop that there. So in order for us to create the feeling of entire chords, we need to play the other notes in the chord. Because we're only playing the single bass notes in the harmony, we're going to have to use the other notes in the melody to imply an entire chord, to give us the feeling of that entire chord. So we'll do that next. First thing to do is to load the sound onto the second track. Same process as before. Left click and drag the MPE Bower Close sound up to the top clip on the second track. Double click, load the MIDI editor. Change the loop length to 4. So the way we're going to create the melody, as I mentioned, is using the notes from the chords. If you'd like some help with this concept, check out our melody video, which will show you how to do this with the 1, 4, 5 chord progression, but the process is the same here. So in the first bar, we've got the chord of C playing. So at the moment we've got a single C note playing. So we want our melody to be in a higher octave. You can see here it says C3 to C4. That'll do for now. And we'll use a counterpoint melody, so our melody will aim for it to come down from high to low as the tune plays. And that'll be a counterpoint to our harmony, which is going from low to high. So we'll see how that sounds. So in the first bar, we can use the notes C, E, and G. It's quite good to start on the root note on the C. So we'll start up here at C4. And one way you can create a melody is to loop as you enter the notes. So if I click up here on the track, it will keep looping round as we enter the notes. With these ambient tracks, you often need slightly longer note lengths in order to hear the note. The second bar, we went to the 2 chord, which is D minor. So that's the notes D, F, and A. If you remember, the D note is already playing. There's A. Go down to F. F is the minor third in the chord, which is very important when we're thinking about the sound of a minor chord. So we'll play that a bit longer. Okay, and then we're going to the C chord again, the first inversion. So the E note is currently playing. I think we'll come down to this low C. and bounce up and down off of this. Might reuse the rhythm from this second bar. And then finally we're going to the 5 chord, which is G, which has the notes G, B and D. You see we're playing a G note here in the C chord. We can carry that over into the final chord because they've got a note in common. And we'll reuse that rhythm again. I might change this final bar a bit. We'll bring in the chords now before I finish up the melody, just to see how these notes sound against the harmony notes. I'll stop that. Click on this master play icon here. I'm going to use these track pans to pan the tracks slightly, so left click and drag down to move this to the left, left click and drag up to move this to the right. Okay, so we'll leave it there. It's quite muddy. Often these ambient and evolving sounds are difficult to create an entire song. You can discern the melody here, but obviously they're designed just to fill in the background of a song with normally a single note sustained whilst you use other instruments on top. But the point of this video was to show you what this sound sounds like, how you can create a simple song with it. And so it is possible, and it's useful to see how Ableton works, how to use chords and melody together, and explore songwriting concepts. Now watch this playlist to master Ableton.